So good evening, everyone, and thank you, Smriti, for having me here. This is basically a clinician's perspective to genetic testing for breast cancer. The topic I've been given is whom, which, and when. So before I launch into the type of tests and who really qualifies for testing, it's very important to know when you conduct a genetic clinic, and I think a lot of us are doing that now, there are certain steps which have to be done. The first step is genetic counseling, where you talk to the patient and you first qualify whether the patient requires testing or not. Secondly, testing in a molecular genetics lab, followed by interpretation by a geneticist, and then finally the clinical recommendations by the oncologist. So I think assessment is key, and this involves taking a detailed family history. You then classify according to risk whether the patient is average, moderate or familial, or high and genetic. And only in that situation, after a thorough genetic evaluation, you would go ahead with genetic testing. So who needs further genetic risk evaluation? And we really fall back on significant family history. So you have three sets of patients. You have those who are already diagnosed with breast cancer, and there's a host of criteria: breast cancer below 30, triple negative below 60, 2 breast cancer primaries in an individual, lobular breast cancer, or breast cancer at any age with one or more close blood relative, which is first, second, or third degree, with breast cancer less than 50, or invasive ovarian cancer, or male breast cancer, or pancreatic cancer, or high grade, that is a Gleason's more than 7, or metastatic prostate cancer. Or you could have a patient with breast cancer at any age and 2 or more close blood relatives with breast cancer at any age. There are many individuals who come to you with a family history and they say, "Doc, we want genetic testing, we're petrified, we're going to get this disease." So you think of first or second degree relatives with breast cancer less than 45, again 2 or more primaries, or 2 or more individuals diagnosed with breast cancer on the same side of the family, one before 50 years of age. And then you ask for a family history of male breast, pancreatic, prostate, or ovarian. And finally, you try to pick up syndromes in the clinic, and really it's very easy to work out the hereditary breast ovarian cancer syndrome, since that's the most common, and you'll get a pattern of breast and ovary within the family on one side, several of the females being affected. But then it's not only BRCA1 and BRCA2 we're looking for, right? We're looking for syndromes like Li-Fraumeni, where you get a sarcoma and you get a leukemia and a brain tumor, and then you can't make sense of it. Or you get tumors with families with colon and endometrial cancer, and you have to rule out the Lynch syndrome. So you have to be on the lookout for personal or family history of these. So let me put forward a case. Mrs. A is a 40-year-old patient, and this is something you will see in your clinic. And she will come to an oncologist for not knowing who else to go to. And she wants information of the breast cancer gene tests. And you ask about her family history, and you find her mother had breast cancer at 58, maternal aunt had it at 65, and on her father's side, the paternal grandmother had it at 79. She has no other risk factors. Her first child was at 25, but she feels she's going to definitely get this disease. So you would want to do a risk assessment, and the genetic counselor will help you do this because we are not qualified to do so. And you look at the likelihood of her developing breast cancer by various models. There are several limitations to each of these models, and then the likelihood of having or carrying a BRCA mutation, where you have myriad risk tables, BRCA Pro, and finally doing a pedigree analysis. So you do a pedigree analysis, and it looks like this. You have a cluster of cancers in females on both the father's and the mother's side. But what's very clear is that none of these are young enough to make the alarm bells ring. So you work out a Klaus model. You have a lifetime risk of about 18%. The myriad table says you have about 3.4 risk of getting a BRCA1, BRCA2. And if you look at the pedigree, there are no indications of syndromes. So this patient falls in the familial risk category that I'd shown you earlier, and you can begin by screening, and you don't need to really recommend testing in this patient. There are several reasons that bring the patient to the clinic for testing. One is they want to do it for the benefit of the family, predictive testing for relatives who are not yet proven to carry the genetic mutation, management of future risks, and finally to influence the current management of the patient. So here you have a 47-year-old BRCA positive breast cancer. She has a very strong history and she's worried about both her daughters who are 25 and 22. And both these daughters obviously haven't been tested yet and they are unaffected. So you would do a full pedigree analysis, you would do a full risk assessment, and what you may find is that there is only a 50% risk of one of the daughters being positive. These are unaffected. Mutation has already been identified in the family. 2 counseling appointments, 4 weeks apart, blood taken at the second, and finally 4 weeks later you find that one of the daughters is positive and one is not. And we recommend genetic testing for individuals who are susceptible to adult syndromes above the age of 18. We normally don't recommend it below that. You can do genetic testing for management, and this is something we oncologists come across very often, and considering the propensity and the preponderance of triple-negative breast cancer in this country, I think it makes sense to be on the lookout for mutations. So this is a lady I saw a few months ago. She was 34 years old, diagnosed with a right-sided triple-negative disease and operated T2N0. Her mother had breast cancer at 45, her maternal aunt at 52, and she's very keen, and we are too, for genetic testing. So we get her genetic testing done, and it has never been done for her relatives earlier. She has a typical BRCA1 mutation, which is one of the founder mutations amongst the Jews. It's the 6869 del. It's clearly pathogenic. And after chemo completion, she herself opts for a bilateral mastectomy and salpingo oophorectomy. So yes, we do genetic testing for management. We must try and test the family member first, and if no mutation is found, testing of others are really not warranted. If the ask for MLPA, you don't find it, then you do a multi-gene panel. By that time they are fed up, they're not going to come back. All right. The same gene, remember, can be seen in a lot of, same cancer can be seen with the same different gene mutations. So if you're looking for breast cancer, you'll find it both in Li Fraumeni and BRCA2. And if you only test for BRCA1 and 2, you'll miss it. High penetrance and moderate penetrance genes on one panel may be a problem. What are the implications for counseling? The recommendations are completely different, as you will see. All right. Then multi-gene panel will throw up a host of variants of uncertain significance, and you really don't know what to do with them. And then everything that you order will not be clinically actionable. So this is a 28-year-old lady who was operated for breast cancer, ER positive. A multi-gene panel testing shows a PALB2 mutation. Now this is not something we see that commonly. Her distant cousin had breast cancer. Her treating surgeon said, now you go ahead for a bilateral mastectomy, salpingo oophorectomy. Problem is she's 28, she's unmarried, she wants to have a family. What do you tell her? So I looked up the recommendations. This is just for PALB2 carriers, where a risk-reducing mastectomy is really not recommended. The question is, this patient has cancer and has a PALB2 mutation. So I'm hoping the next speaker will clarify on what we need to do with her. I have told her to go through surveillance, get married, have her first child, and in 4 to 5 years come back and do her prophylactic mastectomy and oophorectomy. And I think that's a reasonable option. So this VUS can vary between 20 and 40%, and you really need to be careful. As more and more data comes in and ClinVar and other databases become available, the proportion of VUS is definitely going to decrease. So in conclusion, I'm going to go back to my first slide, all right? And when you talk of genetic counseling and you first see the patient to evaluate them for genetic testing, medical family history most important, pedigree analysis critical, risk assessment and pre-test counseling cannot be underscored. If you go ahead with testing for the patient, make sure you know what you're doing. If it's a clinically easily recognizable syndrome, by all means do a BRCA1 and BRCA2. If you can't figure out what's going on and you have more than breast and ovarian cancer happening in the family, you may be better off with panel testing. And remember to look for gene mutations and large gene rearrangements. And finally, when the geneticist and you sit together to interpret the results and talk to the patient, post-test counseling is imperative, and then you have to make a call and talk to the patient about pathogenic, likely pathogenic, and VUS. And with that, I end my talk. Thank you for your attention.